First contact gone wrong. The sensors of Galactic Station Omega-12 detected something that should not exist. A vessel materialized from nowhere, breaking every law of physics the Corvani scientists had established over 10,000 years of space travel. The ship was small by galactic standards, barely the size of a patrol craft. Yet its energy signature burned brighter than a star. Commander Tharkas stood on the command deck, his 6 eyes focusing on the impossible readings. The Corvani were the supreme race of the galactic hegemony, rulers of 1,000 star systems and masters of countless lesser species. His crystalline body towered 12 feet tall, each facet of his form reflecting the light of distant stars through the station's transparent dome. For 5 centuries he had commanded this border station, and nothing had ever surprised him. Until today. The unknown vessel hung motionless in space, a sleek design of curves and angles that seemed both primitive and impossibly advanced. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, with symbols painted in white along its side. The translation system struggled with the markings before finally producing a result that made no sense. United Nations Starship Resolution. Earth Diplomatic Corps. Earth. The word meant nothing to any database in the hegemony's vast archives. No star charts showed such a world. No records existed of a species calling themselves humans. Yet here was their ship, having appeared through methods unknown to the greatest minds in the galaxy. Tharkas turned to his subordinate, a Velkin whose 4 arms moved frantically over control panels. The Velkins were a conquered race, their mathematical brilliance making them useful as navigators and technicians. This one, designated as Unit 7739, had served adequately for 3 decades. Open communication channels. Tharkas commanded, his voice resonating through harmonics that lesser species found painful. Let us see what these creatures want. The main viewing screen flickered to life and every being on the command deck froze. The creature that appeared looked almost like a malformed Corvani, but made of flesh instead of crystal. It had only 2 arms, soft pink skin, and strange fur growing from the top of its head. Most shocking of all, it showed no submission in its posture. It stood straight, meeting their gaze directly, as if it considered itself an equal. The creature spoke, and the universal translators converted its words into the common tongue of the hegemony. Greetings. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Nations Starship Resolution. We represent humanity and the planet Earth. We come in peace, seeking to establish diplomatic relations with the civilizations of this galaxy. Tharkas felt his crystalline structure vibrate with amusement. Another primitive species had stumbled into space, thinking themselves important. They would learn their place soon enough. The hegemony had perfected the process over millennia. First came the evaluation, then the classification, and finally the integration into their proper role as servants of the greater good. Captain Chen of Earth, Tharkas replied, allowing condescension to color his harmonics. You have entered the territory of the galactic hegemony. You will dock your vessel at our station and submit to standard processing for newly discovered species. Your fate will be determined by your usefulness to the Empire. The human's expression changed slightly. Her eyes, only 2 of them, narrowed in a way that suggested calculation rather than fear. May I ask what this processing involves? You will be evaluated for your species' capabilities. Some races serve as laborers, others as technical specialists. A few have proven useful as soldiers. All serve the hegemony and the Corvani who guide it toward galactic unity. Consider yourselves fortunate. Many species no longer exist because they failed to demonstrate value. Captain Chen was quiet for a moment. Behind her, other humans moved into view. They wore simple uniforms, not the elaborate ceremonial armor that proper military forces displayed. Everything about them seemed understated, almost deliberately mundane. We appreciate your explanation, Commander. We will dock at your station. Please transmit approach vectors. The communication ended and Tharkas felt satisfaction pulse through his form. These humans were already more cooperative than most new species. Perhaps they would adapt quickly to their new role. He turned to Unit 7739. Prepare a full security detail. Have the evaluation chambers ready. And alert the slave masters that we may have new inventory soon. The human ship approached with surprising precision, following the assigned flight path perfectly. It docked without incident, connecting to the station through universal airlock systems that had been standardized across the hegemony for millennia. Tharkas arrived at the docking bay with 50 Corvani warriors and twice that number of Genti shock troops. The Genti were another conquered race, bred for warfare and obedience, their minds chemically altered to feel pleasure only in service to their masters. The airlock opened, and 5 humans stepped out. Captain Chen led them, her movements calm and measured. Behind her came 2 individuals who were obviously military despite their lack of visible weapons, and 2 others who appeared to be scientists or diplomats. They looked around the docking bay with interest rather than fear, taking in the sight of the various enslaved species working under guard. "Commander Tharkis," Chen said with a slight bow. "Thank you for receiving us. We look forward to learning about your civilization." Tharkis gestured toward the station's interior with one of his 4 arms. "Come, the evaluation council awaits. They will determine how your species can best serve the hegemony's glory." As they walked through the station's corridors, the humans observed everything. They saw Velkans crawling through maintenance shafts, their bodies modified with cybernetic implants that punished disobedience with pain. They watched Sentinel guards prod exhausted Quellian workers with electric staffs, forcing them to continue their labor despite obvious exhaustion. They noticed the feeding stations where lesser species received their daily ration of nutrient paste, carefully calculated to keep them functional but never satisfied. "Your station is extensive," Chen commented as they passed a processing center where newly captured beings were being surgically implanted with control chips. "Efficiency requires order," Tharkis explained with pride. "Every species has its purpose. The Corvini provide leadership and vision. Lesser races provide the labor and resources necessary for civilization to function. It has been this way for 10,000 years. One of Chen's companions, a man with gray hair and old scars on his hands, spoke quietly to her in their native language. The translator caught only fragments, but the tone suggested concern. Chen replied in the same language, her voice calm but firm. They entered the evaluation chamber, a vast circular room with observation platforms rising in tiers above a central arena. The Council of Evaluators had already assembled, 7 Corvani of various colorations, each one representing a different aspect of imperial administration. Labor allocation, military assessment, biological research, psychological conditioning, resource extraction, technical development, and terminus evaluation, which was a euphemism for determining which species were too dangerous or useless to keep alive. The humans stood in the center of the arena, looking small and fragile beneath the towering crystal forms of their judges. Tharkis took his place on the military assessment platform and activated the recording systems. The evaluation of species Earth-human would be added to the vast archives of the hegemony, another footnote in their endless expansion. The Terminus evaluator spoke first, his deep purple crystalline form pulsing with authority. "Humans of Earth, you stand before the council that will determine your fate. Answer our questions truthfully, for we have ways of detecting deception. First, what is your population?" Chen replied without hesitation. "Approximately 11 billion on Earth, with another 2 billion spread across our colony worlds." The council exchanged harmonics of surprise. Colony worlds implied faster than light travel, yet their single small ship suggested limited capabilities. The technical evaluator leaned forward. "Explain your method of interstellar travel." Your vessel appeared without using any known form of hyperspace or warp technology. "We use a process we call quantum tunneling," Chen explained. "It allows us to move between points in space without traveling through the intervening distance." "Impossible," the technical evaluator declared. "Such technology would require energy levels that would destroy any vessel attempting it." Chen smiled slightly. "We thought so too at first. It took us nearly a century to solve the power requirements. Would you like to see the mathematical proofs?" Before anyone could answer, alarms began echoing through the station. The main display screens around the chamber activated, showing a live feed from the industrial sector. A group of Quellian workers had collapsed from exhaustion, unable to continue their mining operations. Corvini guards surrounded them, energy weapons drawn. Tharkis recognized the scene. It was a standard disciplinary action, performed regularly to maintain productivity. The council would witness the execution of the failed workers, then return to evaluating the humans. It was simply the way of things. The guard captain's voice echoed through the chamber's communication systems. "These units have failed to meet minimum productivity standards for 3 consecutive cycles. Under hegemony law, They are designated for termination. Their deaths will motivate the remaining units to work harder. On the screen, the Quellian workers, small beings with delicate features and large eyes, huddled together. Some were clearly children, their thin bodies shaking with fear. They made soft crying sounds, calling out in their native language for mercy that would never come. Captain Chen's entire demeanor changed. Her relaxed posture became rigid, her expression hardening into something that made even the Corvani council members shift uncomfortably. "Stop this," she said, her voice carrying an edge of command that seemed impossible from such a small creature. The Terminus evaluator's form flickered with amusement. "These are not people, human. They are units of labor. Defective units are recycled. It maintains efficiency." "They are sentient beings," Chen said, stepping forward. "They have families, dreams, fears. You have no right to murder them, murder?" Tharkus found himself speaking. "This is justice, order, the natural hierarchy of the universe. The strong lead, the weak serve. Those who cannot serve have no purpose." Chen looked around the chamber, her gaze moving from one Corvani to another. When she spoke again, her voice was very quiet and very dangerous. "We had hoped to find enlightened civilizations among the stars. Instead, we find slavers and murderers dressed up as leaders." The guards on the screen raised their weapons. The Quellian workers pressed closer together, some trying to shield the younger ones with their own bodies. The countdown to execution began, each second marked by a harsh electronic tone. Chen touched a device on her wrist and spoke a single word in her own language. The translators rendered it as nightfall. Every light in the station went dark simultaneously. The artificial gravity flickered and failed. Emergency systems that had never failed in 10,000 years of operation simply stopped working. In the absolute darkness, the humans moved. When emergency power restored minimal lighting 30 seconds later, the scene in the chamber had completely changed. Every Corvani guard lay unconscious on the floor. The humans stood in a defensive formation, having somehow acquired weapons during the blackout. Most impossibly, Captain Chen stood on the Terminus evaluator's platform, her hand resting on the crystal being's core fracture point, the one vulnerability in Corvani physiology. "Nobody move," she said calmly. "We didn't come here to fight, but we won't stand by while you commit genocide." Tharkus tried to comprehend what had happened. Humans were primitive, with only one ship and soft, fragile bodies. How had they disabled systems that the greatest minds in the galaxy couldn't hack? How had they moved through darkness to defeat Corvani warriors? How did they know about core fractures? Chen's companion with the scarred hand spoke, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "We've been watching your empire for years, studying your technology, your biology, your weaknesses. We know about the 17 other species you've completely exterminated. We know about the billions living in slavery. We hoped we were wrong. We hoped first contact would be different." "Impossible," Tharkus said. "We would have detected your surveillance." Chen smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "Commander, we've been perfecting the art of warfare for our entire existence. We've turned it into a science, then into an art, and finally into something approaching philosophy. Did you really think we would announce ourselves to a galaxy-spanning empire without being prepared?" She removed her hand from the Terminus evaluator's core and walked back to the center of the chamber. "We're leaving now. We'll take any being who wants to come with us. Any who wish for freedom from the hegemony's rule." The labor evaluator's form pulsed with rage. "If you leave, you declare war on the entire hegemony. We will find your Earth and burn it to cinders. We will hunt your species to extinction." Chen nodded slowly. "Yes, I suppose you'll try. But before you send your fleets, you should know something important. The Resolution isn't a warship. It's a diplomatic vessel, carrying only basic defensive systems. We sent it because we believe in trying peace first." She paused at the chamber's exit, her team moving with practiced precision to cover their withdrawal. "But Commander Tharkus, if you force us to send our actual warships, you'll learn why humanity's first rule of warfare is to avoid it whenever possible. Because once we start, we don't stop until the threat is completely eliminated." The humans left the chamber, and within minutes, alarms screamed throughout the station. The Resolution had somehow freed every enslaved being in the industrial sector. Hundreds of Quellians, Velkans, and other species were flooding toward the human ship, seeking escape from their bondage. Tharkus watched the tactical displays in horror as the small human vessel maneuvered away from the station. It should have been easy to stop, to destroy with the station's massive weapons arrays. But nothing worked properly. Targeting systems failed. Weapons misfired and shields flickered uselessly. The Resolution jumped to quantum tunnel space, taking with it 300 escaped slaves and leaving behind a crippled station and the stunned Corvani leadership. In the evaluation chamber, the council sat in silence. Finally, the Terminus evaluator spoke, his harmonics resonating with something that might have been fear. What have we done? Tharkus stared at the empty space where the human ship had been. We've awakened something that doesn't fear us, he said quietly. And if they're telling the truth about their military capabilities, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galactic hegemony had encountered something that might be stronger than they were, and they had just declared war on it. The galaxy learns why humans are dangerous. 3 weeks after the Resolution's escape from Station Omega-12, the galactic hegemony assembled the largest war fleet in its history. 1,000 capital ships, each one a kilometer long and bristling with weapons that could crack moons. 10,000 support vessels carrying millions of Genti shock troops and automated war machines. The combined might of 100 conquered worlds, all converging on the coordinates the humans had foolishly revealed. Supreme Admiral Vecthar commanded from the flagship Infinite Dominion, a vessel that had never known defeat in 3 centuries of service. The Corvani officer stood on his bridge, watching the fleet arrange itself into attack formation. Around him, enslaved technicians from a dozen species worked their stations, control chips ensuring absolute obedience. The humans had sent messages during those 3 weeks, broadcasts on all frequencies speaking of peace and requesting negotiation. Vecthar had laughed at their desperation. They claimed to want no war, begged for diplomatic solutions, warned of consequences. The weak always begged when faced with annihilation. Soon this Earth would be nothing but cosmic dust, and humans would join the list of species that had dared defy the hegemony. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of what the humans called their solar system. Vecthar expected to find a primitive world with perhaps a few orbital platforms, maybe some desperate defensive satellites. What appeared on his sensors made him momentarily question his own eyes. Chen spoke without fear or anger, just a calm statement of fact. Your empire is finished. Every slave world has been liberated. Your fleets are destroyed or have surrendered. You have a choice. Accept the new reality and join a galaxy of equals, or isolate yourselves on this one world and fade into history. We won't force you either way. Unlike you, we believe in freedom of choice. The eldest counselor, whose crystalline form had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, resonated with bitter amusement. You humans speak of freedom and peace, yet you destroyed everything we built. You are hypocrites no better than us. Chen shook her head. No, we're worse than you in many ways. We've committed genocides against our own kind. We've built weapons that could end all life. We've done things that would horrify you. But we learned from those mistakes. We chose to be better. That's what makes us dangerous, counselor. Not our weapons or our tactics. It's our ability to look at our own darkness and choose to walk toward the light. She placed a small device on the floor of the cathedral. This contains the complete history of humanity. Our wars, our failures, our atrocities, but also our triumphs, our art, our dreams. Study it, learn from it. When you're ready to join the galaxy as equals instead of rulers, we'll be waiting. As Chen turned to leave, the youngest counselor called out, "Why didn't you destroy us? You had the power. We would have destroyed you." Chen paused at the doorway. Because that would make us no better than what we're trying to change. The galaxy doesn't need another empire. It needs a community. The hardest thing we learned as a species wasn't how to destroy our enemies. It was how to forgive them. 6 months later, the galaxy had transformed completely. The galactic hegemony was replaced by the Galactic Alliance, a democracy where every species had equal representation. Humans didn't rule it. They simply participated like everyone else. The former slave species began rebuilding their cultures, rediscovering histories that had been suppressed for millennia. The Corvani eventually joined the alliance, though it took them years to accept their new position as equals rather than masters. They brought their knowledge and technology to the collective, finding purpose in creation rather than domination. Captain Chen returned to Earth a hero, though she refused all medals and honors. In her final report to the United Nations, she wrote, "We went to the stars hoping to find friends. We found an empire built on suffering. We did what humans have always done when faced with tyranny. We fought it, we won, and then we did the hardest thing of all. We chose to build something better from the ashes. The galaxy had learned a fundamental truth about humanity. They were not conquerors or empire builders. They were something far more dangerous, liberators. They had weapons that could end civilizations, tactics that violated every rule of warfare and the will to use them. But they also had something the hegemony never possessed, the wisdom to know when not to. Years later, when other galaxies sent scouts to investigate the massive changes in what had once been hegemony space, they found humans and hundreds of other species working together, building, creating, exploring. The scouts returned with a simple message for their own empires. The humans are peaceful. Keep it that way. Because the galaxy had learned what happened when humanity was forced to go to war. They won. Not through superior numbers or technology, though they had both. They won because they understood a fundamental truth that the hegemony never grasped. The most powerful force in the universe isn't fear or control or even military might. It's the simple idea that all sentient beings deserve freedom. And humans, those soft, fragile creatures from an unremarkable planet, were willing to burn down an entire galactic empire to prove it. The war that started with a single ship's arrival had ended not with conquest but with liberation. The galaxy was free, and at the center of it all was a species that had mastered warfare so completely that they chose peace instead, unless someone threatened that peace. Then and only then would they remind the universe why humanity's greatest mercy was their reluctance to fight. Because when humans went to war, they didn't just win, they changed everything.